Did you know that Congress is working on a bill that will federally regulate the buying and selling of catalytic converters?
We're currently working on the bill draft with NADA and Senator Klobuchar, Representative Bayard.
Would have prohibited the sale of any detached catalytic converter.
That affects all of us sitting here at the table.
If they can't be sold and recycled because they're required to have a VIN number marking, then they simply get to the steel furnace and get melted down with the car body and are lost to the steelmaking process.
We are pro-traceable forms of payment.
Bank wire, a check.
Bank wire, check.
As long as it's traceable, it can be connected back to the individual or the business.
You're talking about landfilling a massive amount of the United States natural resources.
600 to 700 million vehicles, 900 million catalytic converters.
Welcome to Noble Six Talks. We are here at the 49th annual IPMI conference in Scottsdale, Arizona. And today's guests, we have Julie Dobbs. You are the head of legal counsel and compliance for Elemental North America. So welcome.
Thank you.
We also have Becky Berube, president of United Catalyst Corporation. So welcome.
Great to be back. Thank you.
Now, you guys are both intricate members of the IPMI PAC committee. So I want to start with, what are the main points in the PART Act bill? So either one of you can take that.
So the PART Act is a bill that was introduced both in the House and the Senate. As you recall, Klobuchar and Bayard were the main sponsors. And there was something really unintended about that bill. For the most part, it's a feel-good bill. Everyone wants to stop auto catalyst theft.
Of course.
Law enforcement, as well. But the problem is that there was a clause in this very short bill that it said it shall be unlawful to basically sell a detached catalytic converter. So that is what put the IPMI PACT committee up in arms, because it would basically stop the flow of supply of recyclables, secondary materials, into the recycling stream. So, it'd be like we'd have to landfill catalytic converters, all these critical minerals. So that was a real call to action for the IPMI PACT. And so what has happened is in the past year and a half, 2-3 years now, it's getting crazy, we've been very instrumental in working with the Senate Commerce Committee, the folks who kind of, on that side, and on the House side with Bayard, and letting them know that there were some unintended consequences. There were some things we really loved about the bill, and there were some things that were really just going to shut down our industry, and we knew that the government did not intend for that to be the case. So the update for us is that we were successful, although Klobuchar almost put the bill through on the National Defense Authorization Act back in December, as is, without any changes. And had it been picked up and passed through the process, it would have become law of the land, and it would have prohibited the sale of any detached catalytic converter.
That affects all of us sitting here at the table.
It affects the whole industry. Yeah.
Hey guys, have you ever wondered if you're leaving money on the table when selling your scrap catalytic converters? Well, we have a solution for you. We have a converter price guide with thousands of part numbers. Just use it. Check it out. You can sign up today, have access for it today. See if you are leaving any money on the table, or keep the guy honest that you're selling to. You want to check it out, make sure you're making the most profits for your business in today's market. It's super simple. Just click the link below. Get started today. Now let's get back to the video.
So thankfully, that bill is going to come back up. It's already being worked on. And the Senate Legislative group, they've already taken things that we have on our points, like traceable forms of payment have been now included, and they have taken away.
Describe that real quick.
Sure. I can pay you not in cash, but I can pay you in a traceable form of payment. It's something that the IPMI had on their points of interest, that we are pro traceable forms of payment.
And that could be a bank wire, a check.
Bank wire, check.
Could it also be another form of payment, like electronic payment, a Zelle or a transfer, something like that? But that's bank account to bank account. So that is a traceable form of payment, right?
And it's interesting because we, in our points, we never went that far, but we did get that question, I want to say 2 years ago. They asked if we had considered those alternate forms of payment. Most people in our business aren't going to be going down that route of Zelle, Cash App, Venmo, things like that. So it was never an issue for us. But of course,
well, I think you're speaking from a processor's perspective. I'm looking at it from a collector's perspective.
Yeah, I think as IPMI Pact, we decided to let the government decide what a traceable form of payment was.
we kept it broad, but of course we have our points that are standard. As long as it's traceable, it can be connected back to the individual or the business. And so we have our base point, and then we send that over, and then the government can decide to do what they feel is best.
There is one other point on the bill, and that comes to the VIN marking. Congress wants to make quite a bit of money available to help VIN mark for law enforcement. And so that is something that it was, we're a little neutral on, but if you look at member companies, it could impact the IPMI member companies all a little bit differently. And so the main proponent of the bill was NADA, the National Automobile Dealers Association, and they were successful in getting 120 organizations to sign on to the bill. We were at IPMI were originally opposed to the bill, but with the help of our lobbyist Ackerman, Rick Spees, Jane Sargent, we've been able to get with NADA and say that if you are going to tackle some of the areas that we have a hard time with, like the traceable forms of payment and especially the detached converter clause, then we could end up being in support of the bill. So we've actually been included now in the group, and the VIN marking is still a contention for some of our friends like at REMA. So ARA, Automotive Recyclers Association, they were already supporters of the bill with the NADA group, the larger group, and then REMA has decided to not join in support or join that group yet because they're still in disagreement about VIN marking.
Well, I think as we were discussing off camera earlier, for REMA as a metals recycling industry, collecting various forms of metal, whether it's retail or industrial, you could have machinery, you could have refrigerators, washers and dryers, you could have electronic components, they all have serial numbers. A VIN number could be a gateway to open up collecting serial numbers on their whole other side of the business. And I could see that as a major nightmare for them. And I can understand why they would be opposed to that.
Right. And then also REMA just has such a vast group. I mean, the amount of people that they're representing, I mean, it's a long list. And then you not only take that, but you take the different states, you take their different chapters. And so for the amount of businesses that they're representing, it is difficult for them to sign on to one thing that might impact all of their businesses very, very differently. So they have to look out for the interest of their recyclers and copper and aluminum and basically what you were getting at.
And I think they also believe in, and we're also members of REMA as well as IPMI and ARA. So it's an interesting Venn diagram for us. Today we have our IPMI hats on. But
That's true.
in terms of REMA, I think they believe the scrap laws that are in place are already doing a good job. And they already take a lot of documentation on every person that sells the material. So I think the onus is like they're already bearing that burden, and they're already doing what they think is required by law. And so this would be a little bit more onus on them, and they don't always get the cars. ARA gets the cars, so it's not a big issue for them.
It's not a big issue for them.
But for IPMI members that process or refine, I think it is a little bit of an issue.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, we're right in the middle between ARA, REMA, and then, of course, we're here with IPMI. But I know when we look at whether it's state legislation or federal legislation, we kind of have to wear all three hats in a sense because we don't want to start pushing something that might hinder, other businesses in a different organization. And so I feel like we're in a difficult position, but also a very good position because we can see how it affects all three organizations. And we do our best to just make sure that we're putting something forward that's not going to impact anyone negatively, or at least with the least negative impact.
So we're not exactly quite sure still whether that requirement will be in the final bill.
What about from the auto manufacturers themselves? I know years past there was a lot of pushback about including the VIN numbers on the catalytic converters especially. Are they still in that mode, or are they kind of coming around to that, or what have you guys heard?
To our knowledge, extended producer responsibility by OEMs is not something that they want to tackle, the VIN marking.
Mm-hmm. But I have seen there's been more of a push on the insurance companies, and there's been the push at the state level for them to implement, whether it's through their insurance companies or just a state pilot program, to have the state funding for your automobile dealers, whether it's new or used, to start implementing those VIN markings at the point of sale, having the insurance companies pay for it, things like that. So I do think, the OEMs are obviously going to have an extremely strong say in this because they're so massive.
Right.
I think they're finding alternate forms of, in case this bill was to get passed, how could they go ahead and prepare and have other routes for the insurance companies or the states to start doing this VIN marking and not them?
Well, I'm just wondering if the bill passes requiring VIN marking, what are the implications for the 600 million converters, cars on the road today that do not have a VIN number?
Ed, that is exactly what we have told Congress. We're like, you do not understand the amount of above ground stock.
Enormity.
If you have 10 million cars that come off the road each year, with at least 2 catalytic converters, the above ground stock is quite, and the hoarding that's been happening since prices came down. You're talking about landfilling a massive amount of the United States natural resources.
600 to 700 million vehicles, maybe 800, 900 million catalytic converters, which is an enormous amount of precious metal, platinum, palladium, and rhodium that would not reach the secondary recycling stream. And it's already strategic. And what does that mean for the United States if we landfill hundreds and hundreds of thousands of ounces?
We just came out of the session, too.
I was about to say, if I'm not mistaken, technically a catalytic converter is considered a hazardous waste.
Right.
And technically, if a person was to throw those into a landfill or throw them into a dumpster, I believe it carries a federal fine.
Right.
And so the only way for you to get rid of those catalytic converters properly is to take them to a recycler. But you have to be able to sell them and get rid of them. And we have to be able to take them.
Right. If they can't be sold and recycled because they're required to have a VIN number marking in order to enter the recycling stream, then they simply get to the steel furnace and get melted down with the car body and are lost to the steelmaking process.
I think we have to remember that this bill is a feel-good bill for law enforcement and for Congress.
Well, I'm not feeling good about it.
But it's one that you're going to see a lot of people in Congress signing on to because it's an easy win and it looks really great. So they call it a feel-good bill themselves practically, And so I think that us from the industry trying to make them aware of the unintended consequences of the bill, that is our job. And so, we're going to be doing that till the cows come home, I guess.
We'll be doing it for the rest of this year. How long is this going to go on?
This one will be in at least another 2 years. We're waiting for the bill draft right now to be reintroduced. We're currently working on the bill draft with NADA and Senator Klobuchar, Representative Bayard. They will likely be introducing this bill after July 4th once the federal government gets through the budget bills. We don't have an exact date, but once that gets introduced, with the amount of support that's going to be behind this bill draft, it could go fairly quickly unless you have a massive group that's in complete opposition of it.
Obviously, it's not a high priority right now, given all that, I'm on tariff calls every Friday with Commerce. So,
every Friday.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, the ITAC 5 Committee on Critical Minerals
Well, the good news is Congress loves to spend money and will probably fund a VIN marking program in some form or fashion.
Looks like it's a done deal.
And to me, it's going to be fascinating given this presidency, the main focus on critical minerals. There's a whole new group that's dedicated to it. I'm going to be interested to see how this bill, if it gets reintroduced, if anyone makes the connection between the platinum group metals that are coming out of converters and this critical mineral push that we have on the presidency. I'm fascinated if there's going to be any headbutting there.
Well, I can speak for IPMI and for the ITAC 5. So Mike Michelay and I are both board members for IPMI, but we're also on the ITAC 5. And ITAC is the Department of Commerce, U.S. Department of Commerce's Industry Trade Advisory Committee, and we're on 5, which is critical minerals and ferrous, non-ferrous metals. And so we have had to go and try to tell two groups of people. You're trying to get to the Commerce Department, who is awaiting for political appointees in this administration still, and then they have to get to the USTR, so the trade representative, and the executive office of the president. And those are where our calls are on Fridays. And we're going through every country that's up for negotiation every Friday. But they were kind enough we sent in a letter. There's member companies for IPMI like Tecamet that sent in their own letter. The problem is with the tariffs is the HTS US codes, or the harmonized tax codes for the U.S. So that is the big issue today, is making sure that, as Julie has mentioned, the U.S. Geological and all of these organizations within the U.S. have the PGMs on the critical minerals list. So they're in high demand for the U.S., for national security, for defense. But the problem is, if you're going to tax them coming in, the secondary supply coming in, because it's coming in as jewelry or it's coming in as sweeps, if you're going to tax those things, and they're going to go to Europe instead of coming to the U.S. for refining, that is where most of the IPMI members have heartburn, is because there's a whole list of codes that are not included in the Annex 2 with exclusions. So you're referring to
IPA.
You're
referring to items that require processing for purification.
Mm-hmm. And we want them to continue to come to the U.S. Right, they're goods that are no longer available. Goods that are no longer used for resale.
Right.
So they have to be destroyed. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But what's happening when their HTS US code is not included as an exclusion on the Annex 2 or in the 232 tariffs, that means that they're going to go to Europe or to Asia. Mm-hmm. And so
it's not going to come into the US.
It's not going to come into the US. So the very minerals that they're demanding that they want, they're almost, again, an unintended consequence. They're almost driving them to another market.
Wow. But yeah, that's a whole other push that we've been talking about in the PACT committee, and that we're wanting to push and just make that connection, because the critical minerals push to domesticate the recycling processes here in the States. I think there's been more of a focus on the rare earth elements and not so much on the PGMs, but truly they are just as important. We absolutely need them if we're going to push to domesticate this recycling process, and that way we are one of the leaders in the platinum group metals. We have to include little things like this with the HTS codes. If there's going to be an exemption for critical minerals, let's talk and make sure that the PGMs are included.
I can say that Commerce has been, they called us, Mike Mickley and I. So first we put our questions in and we didn't hear back. And so it's the government, and they're really busy right now. So, so they were really kind. We kind of said, hey, we're not getting an answer. We're not getting an answer for our members and for our industry. And they put a call on 3 or 4 of them, economists. They got online. They said, give us a list of the critical mineral, the HTS US codes we're missing. So we will get them to our political appointee as soon as we have one. We'll get them to the executive office of the president. So IPMI put out something in the newsletter that showed kind of the questions we had asked. Since then, we've had member companies give us tons of HTS US codes that affect
that's
them.
So helpful.
And so we are putting together a comprehensive list, and IPMI will publish that, in the follow-up that we're getting from the administration. So we're working actively.
That's great.
Obviously, auto catalyst and electronic scrap are high on the list.
Well,
because it's the bulk. It's the bulk of it. It's a lot of what comes in.
Right.
Yeah, because most of us are importing from outside the United States.
So there's a little overlap for us between this federal legislation and then what's going on in tariffs that none of us can ignore.
Right.
It's our everyday life, right?
Yeah, it's about raising awareness and bringing that to the forefront. Absolutely.
Helping the government understand what we do in primary production and secondary supply of critical minerals.
Yeah, and unfortunately, people roll in and out of those positions over a couple of years, so you start over with that process.
Mm-hmm. The career folks that are there are great, the ones that have not taken early retirement. Mm-hmm. And there's a good core of them there, and they're really good analysts and economists and people that know their stuff. And so they realized that they did their best to create a first pass at the list, but they're just not in industry, so they don't know. And that's the whole point of the ITACs. And there's many committees, ITAC committees, and what they do is it's the government and industry, and the government asking industry for its opinion because they are not practitioners.
No, that's right. That's right. So what are you hearing from our members that are supporting these lobbying efforts? Are they on board? Are they in support? Do they like where it's going, not like where it's going?
I mean, it varies because I think one thing to understand is when we had the lobbyists for this bill, I think many people just expect, okay, well, we're going to get exactly what we want. We're going to get it passed. We're going to get it passed quickly. But for those who have any experience with state government as well as federal government, you know that this process is very slow. And it's not so much about us getting everything that we want and pushing forward. Mainly, our goal was to get in and stop what was happening. Because if we wouldn't have retained the lobbyists, if we weren't putting in the effort that we have for the past
we're joined
3 or 4 years
weekly. I mean, now once a month.
This bill could have passed 2 years ago, and then we would be fighting it on the back end. And so it doesn't seem like
one
there's
of the things I remember that was in the original version was you wouldn't be allowed to process or transport across state lines loose catalyst, monolith from detached converters.
That was the 4.2 clause. That was, it shall be unlawful to
Shall be
sell
unlawful to
a detached converter or substrate.
or substrate, or substrate. And I could just imagine there's collectors that are also a processor that decans material, and of course there's no smelter in their state, so they would have to ship it. So put them out of business.
So at the federal level, we've seen some major wins, but also ongoing battles that could reshape the entire recycling landscape. But here's the kicker. It's not just Washington you need to worry about. Some of the most damaging and confusing legislation is coming straight from the states, and it's already putting recyclers out of business. We break that down in part 2. Click or tap the screen to check it out, and we'll see you over there.